What's your first memory? And follow-up question, is that the first time you were conscious? Okay, now, maybe you didn't interpret the question that way, but that's definitely the way that I saw it. When first thought about my first memory, when I thought about my first memory, I was like, I guess it's just the first thing that's ever happened to me. And when I think about it, it's kind of the first thing that like I experienced. So maybe it's just like the first time I ever was. But then I think about a little bit on a more conscious level the first time I became conscious of like I was like living and the first time like life made sense to me, I guess. And I was thinking and I was like that's much later on in life than like my first conscious memory or the first thing I remember happening to me. And so all that to say, yo, what's up and welcome back. Of course, as always to Angel's Reach. I'm Angel and I wanted to dive into the conscious because I thought about my first memory. And my first memory, or one that I can remember, or the first one that I can remember is I was very young. I couldn't have been older than like one or two. Um, and if you come from a Hispanic family as I do, you are very much so used to family reunions and like late night parties and celebrations and things like that going from like 1 to like 4 in the morning sometimes, because they would party super hard. And that's super awesome. I love that about my culture. And but it was pretty hard as a kid. It was a pretty hard as a baby, but you kind of learn some resilience. You learn to be a little bit of a heavy sleeper when you're a Hispanic kid, because you sleep to like those Saturday mornings when your mom's blasting Dominican music, you know what I mean, cleaning the house. Ah, come on, I'm tapped into all my cultures. It's just Hispanics. Okay, yeah, no, yeah, chill. No, but really, um, my first memory, I remember being in this hot, like this big salon room. It probably wasn't too big, honestly. Like I was a baby, I was remembering it huge, but this huge, like white salon with a lot of open space and some pillars, some columns. Almost like a basement level room kind of, and it was like really smoky, whether it was people like smoking, which it probably was, or like a smoke machine with like a bunch of lights and stuff, because they go over the top and stuff. But I remember a lot of smoke and I remember a lot of lights, but I remember it being like dark. I remember like those colorful like strobe lights and stuff, like disco ball lights, but I mostly remember it being like dark and then just getting the occasional red and green beams in my eyes. But the Hispanic chair bed. The Hispanic chair bed is a phenomenon present in most Hispanic cultures where in parties, babies and children have to make do by creating their own bed out of chairs. It's usually two, but sometimes depending on how large the person is, because sometimes it's even like sometimes we even see some adults passed out in some like Hispanic bed chairs. Like it really is chair beds, Hispanic chair. Whatever, man. It doesn't matter. I made the whole thing up. It's a whole bit. I didn't really make the whole thing up. It is a thing that happens in Hispanic cultures. People do pass out in like chairs and stuff like that, but it's mostly like kids and stuff. So that was my first memory. I remember being in a chair bed, or what I believe is a chair bed, because now that I'm trying to really think about it, I might even be regressing to like the first memory I ever had, like just being like in my mother's womb, just like the warmth of it all. You know what I mean? Like dark, warm, and just like in a weird way safe, you know what I mean? And I've been chasing that warmth ever since. No, 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 I really haven't. But it's like my first ever memory. Like the first thing I remember is that like warmed up curled ball feeling and like lights and smoke and just like um yeah, yeah. I just like okay, maybe less smoke than I'm thinking because like I'm picturing like I'm picturing like I just saw Avatar a few days ago. Or Avatar 3 a few days ago and there's like a fight scene at the end. There's a lot of smoke. It's nothing like that big. I'm thinking of like light um what's it called? Like a light fog or like haze, you know what I mean? Like a little bit of that. And so that's like my first ever memory. That's like if somebody asked me what my first memory is, it would be curl up on a Hispanic chair bed. And I remember some disco music playing, or if anything, like a rhythmic bump. You know what I mean? Doom, 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 doom. I remember that, and yeah, darkness and the warmth, and that's and that could have been in my mother's stomach, but I'm pretty sure it's also like I've also spent nights like that when when my dad is too drunk to go home, and my mom was dancing with her friends because she like deserved the weekend off, so that's one of my first that is my first memory. But the first time I gained consciousness is a little bit more of an I think it's a little bit more of an interesting story, but that one is super detailed. That I mean, I kind of don't even want to say the other story anymore. It feels like stupid, but the first time I became conscious was actually during a reading test, funnily enough. So I always thought I was kind of a smart kid, but like um it was mostly, like, sort of drilled into me, like, I didn't really do work for myself, like, I didn't find joy in doing work, and, like, I found, like, joy, like, in, like, the appraisal of, like, teachers and stuff like that, and my mom, like, I worked basically for compliments, and I was like, "You know what? Just doing my work gets me compliments, so I'm just gonna do that," and so I never really cared too much about school, I just sort of did well, until one day they pulled us aside to do like individual tests, and I'm pretty sure they did this like in every grade up until this point, from like first until I believe fourth grade is when I gained like consciousness. And it was because they pulled us aside to do some reading, and I just thought it was like any other reading thing. I just read, I pick up like whatever points, and then I wait for the questions to answer them. You know what I mean? But this book didn't have a point. There was no like, Henry went to do this, this happened, and then this happened. There was no like sequence of events that seemed important. Like it all lacked context. And so they opened up a book randomly, and they went into like 23 pages in, they were like, start from here. And I was like, this is fucking crazy. Like this, like, can we like start from the beginning? I need context. This is ridiculous. You're not playing by the rules, and I don't like that. And so like I was uncomfortable. I was like, what? And so it threw me for a loop, and I was reading, and like I was fine reading it. Like the words weren't like confusing, but like as I was reading, I started to pay attention to the words more, and I was like, okay, wait, I have to make my own context now. This is okay, cool. So what's actually happening in the situation? And what the situation was what the book was about, or like at least the section I was reading was about this kid limping and faking a sickness. Um, and like he's going downstairs to tell his dad, or like say something to his dad, and that was the whole like little paragraph they had me read was the narrator in the first person said something about uh like slowly faking a limp downstairs and hoping to see his dad around the corner to tell him something like about breakfast. And I was like, I didn't understand that at all. Well, I understood like the what actually happened, but I was like, I don't understand the context of this at all. And so the woman was like, all right, what did you think about that reading? And I was like, I don't know, I was indifferent. Like I was like, I wasn't rooting for the guy. I wasn't like, I didn't wish like something bad happened to him in the story. And I like really looked at it that black and white. I was like, I don't know. And she was like, why was he faking a limp? I was like, I don't know. And they're like, how old was he? And I was like, he said he was like 13 or 14 or something like that. And they're like, why would he fake a limp in the morning? And I was like, I don't know, man. I wouldn't. I'm not him. I don't know why I would fake a limp in the morning. And he said he's like going to school, right? And I was like, oh yeah. He said he doesn't want to go to school. And then that's when it clicked in my head. I was like, oh wait, he's faking a limp because he doesn't want to go to school in the morning. And that's why, and then the whole like scene like played out perfectly in my head, and I was like, oh, I had all that information, but I didn't come to that conclusion. And then as soon as she said that, I was like, "Oh shit! Wait, I have to. Oh, I have to think." That's so fucked up. But I was like, "Oh, I have to like actually like think about shit and like come to conclusions and um take every bit of information into account." And I was like, "Oh, that's actually like super cool. Like when shit makes sense to me, it really feels like puzzles clicking into place or like a lock and key and like an aha moment. And it was like, oh, and I remember vividly, like, her going like, "Yeah, that's what's going on in the scene," and, like, cause she asked me to, like, reread it a couple times, she's like, what's going on in the scene? What's going on in the scene?" And I just kept, like, saying verbatim what's happening. I was like, "He goes down the stairs, he does that." She was like, "No, but what does the scene mean? What is going on in the scene? Why is he doing that?" And, like, it was all laid out there for me, but, like, the it was greater than the sums of its parts or whatever the hell that means. Okay, wait, let me not just like throw buzzwords out there. Let me actually, you know, like all the parts were right there. And like individually the parts are right there for me to see and I could see it, but like I didn't really think of putting it all together and getting context and like using it as context. I just sort of thought everything that I had was just what was given to me and I just had to keep going on, but like there's a lot of things you just have to circle back to and think about, and I was like, oh wait, my thoughts shouldn't be like linear, and like I can remember things, and like not that I didn't remember things, or like I'm phrasing it like I'm like this like a motionless savant or something like that. No, like I'm like it just shocked me that I could like use context, and it's oh that this is so bad for the American education system that I was like oh kid at age 8 finally learns to think. No, it was just like um oh dude, I'm not helping my case whatsoever. All right, whatever. That was my first like time I was like conscious and I was like, oh wait, we have to think, we have to, like because before that I was just being like I was just existing. I will go into this in a later video, but like my whole purpose low key was just like making people laugh and like smile and stuff. That's all like I wanted to do. It's all I've ever wanted to do. And like specifically as a kid, I remember that that's all like I cared about, and making my parents smile was like, was just doing the work and stuff, and then making my friends laugh was doing whatever I believed comedy was at the time. And that's an interesting topic to go into. But yeah, I guess I'm gonna just leave it like that because I've already taken enough time as is, and I'm pretty sure that second story didn't even really make too much sense because all I did was read something and get called dumb by a teacher essentially for giving me like context. But it really did just open my eyes to like, dang, okay, cool, all right, cool. You like you gotta do a little bit more than B. You gotta do a little bit more than B, and sometimes you just need a pat on the back for being. And you know what? I'm gonna give that to you. Self pat in the back. You know what? You've probably been doing pretty good, unless you've got some crimes in your. Let's not get into that. Let's not get into the negativities of it all. Okay, I'll talk to you guys later. Like, subscribe, bell, watch other videos, all that good stuff. Bye. Where's the stop recording button?